So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our current Innovative Cities lecture. I'm Carolyn Eswine. I'm an associate professor with the Department of Urban Planning here at the School of Architecture and Urban Planning. I want to start with our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge in Milwaukee that we are on traditional Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee homeland along the southwest shores of Michigamme, North America's largest system of freshwater lakes, where the Milwaukee, Menominee, and Knickknick rivers meet, and the people of Wisconsin's sovereign Anishinaabe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, and Mohican nations remain present. Here are some resources for you. We always encourage you to think about the historical use of the land where you live or where you work. So welcome to, again, our fall 2023. Today we're joined by Dr. Victor Amaya and Danya Littlefield from Data You Can Use. Our upcoming presentation, the next one will be October 25th, and that is with the president of APA, Angela Brooks. Registration will be available soon for that one. And then we have innovative or series in November, a panel on equitable zoning, and we will close out the semester in December, Shifting Gears, which is a new book on different transportation strategies. So today we have Victor and Danya joining us, and they're going to talk about data to action, how you can use data to benefit your planning and neighborhood projects. So this isn't just about what typical data is, but we're excited because they're going to share some examples of how they're actually using data and open source data that might be available to you, or some partnerships that you might consider for your community. So welcome, and if you have questions or comments, please put them in the chat, and I may interrupt during the presentation. Otherwise, we will have a question and answer discussion at the end. So welcome, Victor and Danya. We're excited to have you join us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that introduction. Thank you, Caroline. And, I want to really thank the School of Architecture and Urban Planning for inviting us to speak today. We're really excited to be here with all of you. It's an honor to share about the data that we use and data you can use overall, right? With your academic community and planning professionals from across the state and region. As Caroline mentioned, today we'll be speaking about some examples of how we work with partners to better use the data for planning purposes that improves communities, and how we can help our partners move from data to action through our work as a community-based data and research organization. The secret to our work comes not from the technical expertise side of things, but more about how we work together with community members at the ground level. And we start with community in mind first. We like to say we meet them with they are, that's our strategy. And in meeting them with they are, we're able to support them with data understanding, increasing capacity for data understanding and technical ability. As Caroline mentioned, my name is Dr. Victor Amaya. I am the president and executive director of Data You Can Use. I've been with the organization for almost 2 years, and my background prior to coming to Data You Can Use was in the K-12 world, where I was a educator for many years, an administrator, and led a nonprofit, educational nonprofit here in Milwaukee as one of their senior leaders. And I am joined with my colleague.
I am Danya Littlefield. I'm a program manager here at Data You Can Use and have been with the organization for 2 years now, just over 2 years. And before that, I worked as a planner and urban designer here locally in Milwaukee at Grafe, and I have a master's in city planning as well. So really excited to share about the work that we do at Data You Can Use with this community of planners. So thank you so much for having us.
All right, so we're gonna move into a little bit of background about Data You Can Use. Our mission is to advance community access to data and the skills needed to drive informed, equitable decision-making in Milwaukee and beyond. We really envision a place where everyone has the tools they need to make equitable decisions and create healthy communities. If you can picture, Data You Can Use, we like to say we're right in the middle of an ecosystem of different sectors. We work with government entities, neighborhood organizations, funders, residents, academics, nonprofit organizations. And, we like to say is that our role is to connect people with data, who need data with people who have data or vice versa. We believe that if we have better decisions or better data, we will have better decisions and better communities. We're also part of the National Neighborhood Indicators Partnership, NIP. We're one of 32 cities, and you can see there, you can use there in Wisconsin. We're part of 32 cities that are part of this specific partnership. That also partners with the Urban Institute. In this partnership, we're able to learn, about what's happening or what other data entities are doing across the nation. And also, we're able to share some of the great things that are happening here in Milwaukee with our partners across the nation. Today, we'll be highlighting a couple of projects that also have influenced some of the practices that have happened outside of Wisconsin due to the work that we have been doing. We are going to be doing a little overview of our projects. So, the 4 projects on top that you see there, we'll be going over those. And then we'll be moving into, okay, how can we take this, all of these things that we do, how do we take it into action and to really implement at a community level? But in addition to those 4 projects, we also have the Health Data Users Group, which is, quarterly events where we bring organizations from different sectors to share, the great things that they're doing, projects that are, that are data driven, that are really impacting communities. This is known as the Health Data Users Group, but moving forward, it'll be known as the MKE Data Dive, which, we wanted to make it more inclusive so that, so it goes beyond the health sector and to include other sectors to also share the amazing things that are doing in data. So think about this as a gathering where people celebrate the great things that are happening. Also, we also have Data Dreams, which are comparative projects that we announce at Data Day. Data Day is our annual event. And those Data Dreams are funded by foundations. So essentially, it's pro bono services that we provide to an organization that applies and wins the Data Dream. And in that way, we work on projects that, to start an organization to be more, start a data process, or we work with organizations that have a lot of data and don't know what to do with it. This is a great way for us to connect with organizations, but also to provide services at no cost. In addition to that, we also do program evaluation services, and we have other contracts where we do fee for service. So let's start a little bit by the MKE indicators. The MKE Indicators project is a set of interactive maps that was funded by the Community Development Alliance. It launched during Data Day in 2019, and it currently has a total of 5 main categories covering 22 different indicators. These indicators are intended, or this, and maps and interactive maps are intended to help community members, planners like yourselves, policymakers, and neighborhood organizations to plan, document, but also explore key pieces of information about the neighborhoods. The indicators have been chosen very carefully based on a review of best practice, an importance of those indicators, but also the interests of users, because ultimately we want to make sure that people are using these indicators, that they're useful to put them into action. This idea started when in 2013 the city released a map stemming from a market value analysis and including indicators of important market conditions. So very focused on housing. And what was realized was that we couldn't just look at one area, that we needed to look at things in a more holistic way. So that's how we got into additional indicators like health, population equity, equity and access, and equitable housing. You can find these indicators on our website, and Danya can, we'll put that on the chat right now. They have an explanation of what they are, and basically what you can expect when you go into these maps. and each set of indicators has an interactive map. So some of the topics that we cover through these indicators are, equity and access, population health, market value, and equitable housing. And then there is some sub indicators underneath each of them. Again, these were carefully researched, carefully really vetted for not only importance, but also for, community needs and interests. We do have upcoming partnerships with the Fair Housing Council of Metro Milwaukee, who are currently working on publicly available maps showing home debt mortgage data, which is the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act data. And this is a way to better understand where investment is occurring in the city. So, we're, in our plans is to expand on these specific indicators and also look at what does it look like to have some education indicators also, to make sure we add those. An example of what this looks like, what you see in there is what the map will look like. So you'll see some of the tabs where the different indicators are within the specific equitable housing side of things. And the data for this specific indicator comes from the U.S. Census Bureau, the American Community Survey 5-year estimates. You can do several things here. You can, look at, the different aspects. So there's a legend on the right. In this case, the City of Milwaukee average percent of occupied rental units paying a greater of 30% of income of rent at the census tract level is 53%. And the higher or the darker you see something is the higher portion of occupied rental units. You'll see in every single map, you'll see an explanation of why this indicator is important. And also you'll see if you click on it, then you will actually then also see some of those specific data according to that specific census tract. You can also do a search where you can actually draw the boundaries of a neighborhood or several neighborhoods to better understand what those outcomes are for very specific neighborhood boundaries. So several ways that you can use this. So that is the MK indicators project. The data chats, I think, data chats is something that anyone can use. The data chats model was something that was coined here in Milwaukee, and we actually have a guide in our website that was written in collaboration with the Urban Institute and our NNIP partners. And it came out from a project that we did here in Milwaukee in one of our neighborhoods. Picture data chats as a less extractive form of a focus group. It's more of a discussion, a conversation about data. It is designed to really understand the perspectives and interpretations of the people experiencing very specific, things. So, perhaps it is some health data or some education data. It might be, housing data. And, the idea here is to really understand the experience of the people who live within those neighborhoods to better understand and complete the picture of what the data is telling us. It's a way for us to kind of take, the quantitative data, unpack it with qualitative methods. This is something that, you can find the guide, you can see how you can run a data chat to better understand what's important and what the community needs. And now I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Danya, who will talk about our neighborhood portraits.
Awesome. Thanks, Victor. And I've just been putting some links in the chat too about where you can see that guide to data chats that was published with the Urban Institute. So there's a link to that in the chat as well. So I will tell you a little bit about the Neighborhood Portraits Project, whereas the MK Indicators Partnership are indicators about the city of Milwaukee that are explorable in an interactive map format by census tract. The Neighborhood Portraits combines data for multiple census tracts that roughly approximate neighborhood boundaries so that neighborhood groups and community organizations working in Milwaukee neighborhoods have a readily accessible set of data that describe their neighborhood. As I'm sure that many of the planning professionals on this call have used data.census.gov and accessed information about the communities they work in. If you're looking at a neighborhood scale, though, it takes some expertise to sort of combine neighborhoods for multiple census tracts and by specific neighborhood boundaries. So we do that work and publish reports for the community so that they are available for everyone. So this is kind of a snapshot of our website page for the neighborhood portraits. I think Victor will probably put a link in the chat to this part of our website as well. And our most recent set of portraits that were released use 2017 to 2021 Americans Community Survey 5-year estimate data. And we have 20 neighborhood portraits. Our portraits right now do not cover every corner of the city of Milwaukee. Instead, these neighborhoods, the original set of neighborhoods were based on neighborhood strategic planning areas. Those NSP boundary or NSP neighborhoods and the boundaries associated with them were developed by the city and are used for distribution of community block grant funding. The group of neighborhoods has expanded since they were originally developed to the group that we have today. And if you're familiar with Milwaukee neighborhoods, you'll see a lot of familiar names, even in this snapshot of partial snapshot of the neighborhoods we have included. And just a little bit about how we put them together is that we take the NSP neighborhood boundaries. And I say NSP neighborhood boundaries because the boundary of a neighborhood and the NSP boundary aren't always the same. Cities, depending on where you're working in the state or region, this may resonate with you. There isn't always one definition of what a neighborhood boundary is, and that's especially true in Milwaukee. So we start with the neighborhood strategic planning area boundaries. We select the census tracts that overlap with that NSP area by 50% or more. But then a key step that we do and kind of core to our mission is we talk to community groups and neighborhood organizations to understand, do those census tracts make sense for their neighborhood? Is this resulting report that comes from the data of these aggregated census tracts, does that represent the neighborhood that they serve? Should we add more census tracts? Should we remove some? In this case, for the Lindsay Heights neighborhood in Milwaukee, even though just a corner of this census tract was included in the boundary, the service area that Walnut Way, a key partner in the Lindsay Heights neighborhood, serves, they really wanted to understand the data for this census tract as well, 1860, so we included it. And I mentioned it's a report, it's focused on tables, kind of readily accessible and formatted tables about each neighborhood, and we divide those tables into two sections: population characteristics and housing and household characteristics. So you can see an example of the topics covered here. Many of them will be familiar to you all if you work with census data in your work. But again, the key point here is that this is a readily accessible and widely used throughout the city to understand different neighborhood dynamics happening in these neighborhoods. Here's an example of some of the formatted tables and how they look on the page. You can see this is for the Harambe neighborhood in Milwaukee. And you can see that almost 75% of the occupied housing units in that neighborhood are renter occupied. Also that the median household income that we calculated for Harambe based on the multiple census tracts worth of data was $28,936. And that would be compared to the city of Milwaukee median household income of $45,318. This is as of the 2021 5-year ACS estimates. These are the types of, we do, one of our tenets of our work is that we don't like to compare neighborhoods with each other, but we do want to make sure that neighborhoods understand how they compare to the city as a whole. Upcoming for this project is to make this data even more accessible in different ways and to make sure people have different ways of interpreting the data. We know that some people are really visual, they want data visualizations, and they want a really quick reference for some neighborhood, facts and figures. So we are in the process or on the verge of releasing our neighborhood dashboard, which will use some key data points from neighborhood portraits and you'll be able to select a neighborhood, and the data visualization will change to show kind of the neighborhood portrait data for each neighborhood. So stay tuned for this. I have two data partnership projects to talk to you all about. So shifting kind of from our public facing data tools and the things that we do to kind of level set all of our partners with having data at their fingertips that describe Milwaukee neighborhoods. We also know that there's a real value in working with partners who have really community focused goals to develop new types of data and kind of explore Milwaukee through data and make sure that the work that they're doing and the data related to that work is really useful and understandable, and also work towards sharing that more publicly as well. So I have two examples of this type of data partnership work. One is the Reclaiming Our Neighborhoods group. If you're in the Milwaukee area, you may have heard of the RON Coalition. It is a group of 9 and now 10 neighborhood organizations representing over 15 neighborhoods across the city of Milwaukee. And what they're really focused on is is housing condition in the neighborhoods that they work in. You can see a representation of where those neighborhoods are located in the city on the right side of the slide here. So this group was formed many years ago, started by the Sherman Park Neighborhood Association, and then has expanded over the past years to become a coalition of many different neighborhood groups. And in their most recent, in 2020, oh my gosh, there we go. The neighborhood groups completed exterior housing surveys because residents and community development professionals working in these neighborhoods were so concerned about the upkeep of some of the houses that they were seeing, and particularly worried about either homeowners who didn't have the resources to maintain their properties or landlords that weren't investing in their rental properties in their neighborhood. You can see some examples on the left-hand side of the slide of homes in varying states of repair, some boarded up windows, and dumping on vacant lots. These are photos taken by not volunteer, but resident and community group surveyors. On the right-hand side of the slide, you'll see some groups of surveyors from different neighborhoods around the city working to walk each block and carefully track what is happening on each building in their neighborhoods, and what then does the neighborhood look like as a whole from an exterior housing condition perspective. I'll show a little bit more about the process. So you have on the left-hand side of your screen, a resident surveyor looking at the exterior of a house in their neighborhood. And in this case, they are checking out a upper porch condition. You can see then they're working with a tablet that has a set, the survey itself happens in a software called Regrid. And there's a survey that kind of walks the surveyors through the condition of each part of the exterior of a home, and then attaches that data to a parcel data set. It's automatically geolocated and also attached to the master property record for the city of Milwaukee.
Quick question, Danya. So I know this is Milwaukee centric for your project, but is this app or this survey available open source, that if I live in Madison or La Crosse that I could be doing this as well?
Good question. So the RON Coalition has developed it's a co-developed survey by all of the neighborhood groups. So right now the survey itself isn't open source. That is a great idea. I will say, if you are interested in the questions that this group uses, the set of questions, because there's quite a number of elements of an exterior that are examined and then create this data set. Please reach out to us. We'd be happy to put you in touch with the RON Coalition. I'm sure that they would be willing to kind of share what they've learned and what they work on for this. Each year they change it a little bit, the survey. We're hoping to, just based on what we learn, like how, do we want to actually find out a little bit more about porch steps or something that wasn't quite captured in prior years. So once all of the data is kind of entered on a parcel by parcel basis, what the kind of the really amazing work of the resident surveyors and the community groups was to catalog every single or survey every single parcel in most of the neighborhoods that they work in. This again is the Harambe neighborhood in Milwaukee. You can see that the purple parcels in this boundary are every parcel that was surveyed for exterior housing condition. And what that means is that we were able to take for all of the neighborhoods, make a big aggregated data set about that and report on all of the neighborhoods as a whole, and also neighborhood by neighborhood, what are the different dynamics happening with exterior housing repairs. Because I mentioned it's parcel identified, we were also able to learn a little bit about ownership for each of those parcels. So, understand if landlord-owned properties have a different rate of repairs needed than owner-occupied.
So there's a question about how specific you get for each parcel. And I was curious too, it's all exterior, right? So are you looking at roof, porches, paint, windows? Can you just talk a little bit about that? And then there's some chats going on here about the program itself, that there is a user fee. So it sounds like it would be available for people outside of this particular project, but there's a fee. So.
Regrid is the platform that the survey is built on. So the survey questions themselves were built by Ron. So I think you can build your own survey within the Regrid platform. So that's a good point. So there is a user fee for Regrid itself. I know in this case it is funded through partnerships and grants for this group. I think although I don't know the specifics, so please let us know if you'd like to learn more about how that all works for the coalition. We can connect you with them. In terms of what they look at on the home, it is very detailed. It will be, paint conditions for multiple factors. How is the siding, is the siding painted? How is that paint? How is the porch paint? What's the condition of the windows? Do you see cracked glass? What about the lower porch railing and the upper porch railing? Can you see the roof? What's the condition? Can you see the chimney? What's the condition? It is very detailed, and there are specific reasons why. I mean, the big goal of this group is to both connect homeowners who might need resources to programs that can help them access resources to repair their homes, and also to understand the impact of home repair on tenants, and try to hold landlords accountable when they are not investing in the kind of safety of their tenants by keeping their homes in repair.
Thank you.
I will, do you have another question? Okay. I will keep going through some of the big findings of the report when the data was aggregated together. So overall, these neighborhood groups surveyed 19,827 properties in 2022. Truly an amazing amount of work, and shows the power of a coalition working together. That included 16,913 residential mixed-use properties. 3,818 of them needed at least one major exterior repair. So minor and major repairs were also noted in the survey, and 2,486 of them needed multiple major repairs. They also found that wasn't evenly distributed. So 9.8% of the owner-occupied residential properties needed multiple major repairs, while 18.2% of the investor-owned residential properties needed multiple major repairs. So just providing some data that really backed up what neighborhood groups are seeing about landlords neglecting property at the expense of their tenants, or at the expense of the health and safety of their tenants, truly. A couple more findings, the kind of disparity in the proportion of properties that needed multiple major repairs, just 2/3 of them were investor owned. And then the group wanted to calculate, like, what would it take to address all of this across all of our neighborhoods, just to show the amount of investment that, really could be used to improve the neighborhoods and the lives of the people who live in them. And they, using some fairly conservative estimates, I would say, for repairs needed for each of the major repairs to all the homes, found that $54 million, over $54 million would be needed to repair them. Keep in mind, all of the exterior repairs that they were cataloging are only that exterior. Interior conditions are not cataloged because this is all happening from the sidewalk. So a lot of this is used as a little bit of an indicator of what might be happening to the condition of the house overall. So there's a lot upcoming for the Wrong Coalition, and certainly I'm not the right person to give you the overall, outlook of their, strategy and the work that they envision together. But I will say that they are targeting specific homes that maybe owner-occupied homes that need major repairs, with door-to-door surveys to better understand how they can connect those individuals with resources, and holding landlords accountable as well through a variety of different tactics, including just trying to speak with them about what they found. Next year, they'll be updating. So this year they didn't do exterior housing condition surveys, but next year they plan to, including an expanded list of neighborhood partners, partially because of the success of this coalition and the momentum they're experiencing now. And then they'll be working on partnerships to explore the implications of this data and kind of intersect it with other data, hopefully to learn more about who owns the homes that, which are the top landlords that need multiple major repairs to their properties, and also to understand how health outcome data correlates with housing condition. And that's something that one of our graduate students that are working with us at Data You Can Use is assisting with this fall. So I'm going to move to another example of our data partnership work in Milwaukee. We are also a data partner for the Community Development Alliance. And Victor mentioned earlier in the presentation that the MKE indicators were developed, those interactive maps were developed in partnership with the CDA. The CDA developed Milwaukee's collective affordable housing strategic plan. And the goal is to really address the racial inequities in homeownership. This is a graph from the report that the CDA published that shows homeownership rates across racial groups, and understanding, we in Milwaukee, in order to address this disparity and have a similar homeownership rate across both white people and people of color, Hispanic and Latino and Black and African American people, many more new homeowners of color would need to be able to invest in homes. One of the ways that happens is through with the support of homebuyer counseling agencies in our city, and these are organizations that provide HUD certified homebuyer counseling. So some big questions is, how many people of color are looking to buy homes in Milwaukee each year, and how many are successful? What are the barriers to homeownership for those who aren't successful? And where are the Milwaukeeans who are looking to buy affordable homes? Where should kind of strategies to either build or renovate potential new homeownership opportunities be cited in the city? This is a huge many-pronged strategy by the CDA and many partners, but I'm going to be talking about one specific part that we work on, which is working with the homebuyer counseling agencies themselves that work in many of them that work in Milwaukee, these four specifically, to create a collective data set where we're bringing data from each of these four organizations here: Act Housing, Housing Resources, Inc., United Community Center, and SDC, Social Development Commission, bringing data together to understand who is being served by homebuyer counseling and who are successful homebuyers from among that group. So there's a lot of things we are learning from this, and I would say although we've been working on this for a little over a year, actually coming up on a year, there is a ton more to learn. But one of the things that we've been able to do is with geolocated, but also the location of each of these dots is masked to protect privacy. We've been able to learn a little bit more about where are people looking for homes in Milwaukee, where do they live now, in a general sense, because again, these are privacy protected points. So I will zoom in a little bit so you can see what this looks like here. We have new homeowners in pink and aspiring homeowners in orange. When we zoom in to kind of the scale of a neighborhood and turn on some neighborhood boundaries, you can sort of see the gaps that are happening. The amount of people who live in neighborhoods in Milwaukee who are in homebuyer counseling programs and are interested in purchasing homes, and those who are able to purchase homes in those areas. You know, the Amani neighborhood is an example where, you know, based on our kind of the data we have, it looks like many people would like to, who live in Amani, would like to buy a home, and only to have been able to buy a home in the neighborhood. Switching to a different geography here, these are the aldermanic districts for the city of Milwaukee. You can sort of see on a different scale the same type of gap. And then what this map will be able to show is, you know, quantify that gap. How many people are aspiring homeowners in these districts, and what are how many new homeowners. The great thing about this data is we'll be able to say for the new homeowners, you know, what are the resources they were able to access to help them get there? What's the down payment assistance as a whole, and understand what we might be able to do to help the people who are the orange dots join the pink dots as new homeowners in our city. Some challenges. This is a very, I would say, a unique project in that we're working with the CDA to and these key partners to build a coalition and collect, create a new data set that both all of those organizations that provide counseling can learn from, but also the city as a whole can use to understand what strategies will help increase racial equity in our homeownership rates in Milwaukee. And I will say that some of the challenges that collecting program level data about individuals can be sensitive. We've had to do a lot of work to make sure that we're protecting data, like de-identifying it whenever, or you know, as much as possible, and just to make sure that everyone is, you know, that data is safe. And that also when you're working with different organizations and creating one data set from it, I mean, in contrast with the Reclaiming Our Neighborhoods Coalition, where everyone is entering data in the same format, these organizations are not. And so it takes some data processing power to work across different organizations or work with different organizational partners and create one data set together. But we are finding out a lot from that data set, and that is a really wonderful strategy tool. Some next steps will be to hopefully make some of the program data publicly available, mainly through that map format that I was showing you. So we'll be working on, the CDA will be working on making that public in the coming months, and then continue to collect this program data on a semi-annual basis and engage. The CDA's work will be to engage with planners and policymakers to understand what can be done to support these aspiring homeowners in Milwaukee. That brings us to the end of our kind of project discussion, and we're happy to take questions. I'll turn it back over to Victor and everyone.
Thank you so much. You can tell by all the questions that there's a lot of interest in this. I think if you could also address, I know you're very Milwaukee focused, but there is the national network that Victor had mentioned. Are there other partners that you have in Madison or other parts of the state that some of the viewers could access something similar, or is it more that they have to identify partnerships and either team with you or other groups?
What I would say, and it's a great question. I think what I would say, we are a Milwaukee focused nonprofit. So much of our work, you know, and within our mission is to make sure we are supporting the Milwaukee community. With that said, we do have partners that are outside of Milwaukee. We're currently doing a needs assessment, a state needs assessment for legal action and duty care, where we're actually covering the whole state and gathering data, you know, from this needs assessment. We've also done, you know, program evaluations for organizations that are national, that have some roots in Milwaukee but are national. So definitely, you know, looking forward, I think in our future is to continue expanding our partnerships beyond Milwaukee, while not always being, you know, our focus in Milwaukee for many reasons, right? And then, you know, and I would say there is potential cross-city collaborative projects and grants that will be coming soon through our national partners, through that national network. We're looking to see how we can collaborate, on different aspects, on different projects, while also supporting our own cities, but also providing that collaboration cross-city. So that's something that's also coming up the pipeline.
That's helpful to understand because I think there's a lot of interest in this. And I know JD is also putting some links in the chat that she utilizes this with her students as well. Can you describe how the partnerships work? So is there fee-based or how are you incorporated in some of the larger city plans?
Yeah, so different ways, right? Some of the project is grant funded, where we look for the grants and partner with other people. We also partner, when we design a project with, different entities, and we support the data side of things, and we do, more of a collaborative grant type of approach. So we have several projects that, started from that. We also have a fee for service where, if there's a need, and the funds are there for the organization, we also provide that fee for service. Ultimately, we want to be able to, support communities. So much of our work and much of my work currently is fundraising and grant writing to make sure that we are able to support those, communities on the ground, right? I mean, there's a lot of, large organizations in Milwaukee. Our mission is to work side by side by those people that are being impacted, specifically those especially the marginalized communities. So because of that, much of our work is to make sure we fund the grants to be able to support. And I did see Dr. Jairi Cancels Martinez question around storytelling in the portraits. Much of our work that we're doing right now is to automate the way we are able to publish and gather that data. So, I think we talked a little bit about the use of technology and how we can use it to be able to put together, data sets that are localized in a faster way. So I'm happy to announce that, if there's a neighborhood right now that's not, one of the 20 neighborhoods, and we wanted, to create a portrait for that, we're able to at a way faster rate than we were in the past because of that automation, because of technology, and because of a staff member that's very skillful also, right? Like, there's great minds out there that and within our team also. So that's in the future, we're looking to expand the number of portraits and number of neighborhoods. Perhaps it's also combining some of the neighborhoods and seeing what that picture looks like, specifically when neighborhoods are working together in specific projects, if we needed to, provide some data for that. Also, Danya leads, the portrait. So maybe Danya, can you talk a little bit about some of the workshops that we have planned in the future? In addition to just presenting them, to also talk about those with neighborhood partners.
Yeah, so we, first of all, whenever we update the portraits, we do at least one public facing workshop to just, make sure that we make the portraits accessible. We explain how they work and how to use them, some common ways that people use them in their work. So that's kind of like a general session. We're also moving into a model where we are taking the portraits directly to the neighborhood groups that work and often live in those neighborhoods, and making sure that they are aware that this is a resource that they use. We hear all the time from people around the city who use them, and then also sometimes they come as a surprise. And we hear from even people that we've partnered with who are like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that all of this data was here at our fingertips. The great thing about that'll let us kind of have an in-depth discussion with the people who are supporting neighborhoods using that data and advocating for neighborhoods using that data, but also understand their needs. Like, it could turn into something like, oh, our resident groups that we host really would love to understand this. Like, what about workshops for them? Or what about looking at different topics? So kind of continuous engagement with the neighborhood groups about this work, so that we're meeting the needs of residents and partners.
I think it's great because based on Mark's comment about how long have people lived in a neighborhood, that would be really great. You could add that to your conversation or to the survey. I had a question about gathering maybe not volunteers, but the residents, right, that are doing the survey. If you could talk a little bit about how you find them and engage with them, and then that next step, like how does this continually stay alive and is updated? How does that work within your system or within the neighborhood?
I'm curious about which project you had in mind for that question, because
The
almost all of our
portraits.
work.
Well, the neighborhood portrait specific, right?
Yeah. So our primary point of contact for the neighborhood portraits are with our kind of organization level partners, but I think that they form the data that's within them often forms the basis of a lot of different kind of data chat type activities that we do. We use them all the time to kind of empower residents to know about their neighborhood and then respond to that. Like, is this data surprising to you? Is it or does this match your understanding of your place? And I think for all of that work, and our colleague Amy is on this call and would be the better person to talk about data chats in general, but with all of this work, we are always partnering with those community organizations that have daily, weekly, monthly contact with residents to convene groups of residents and community members. We are not a direct convener usually, although we convene, as we mentioned, data users in a few different ways. We have one more way that we'd like to talk to you guys about before we sign off on the call too. So yeah, I think partnership is how we do that with direct community facing organizations often.
So I'd love to hear what you think are sort of next opportunities. I liked that connection, I should say, of health and neighborhood quality or housing quality, right? Conditions. I think that is something that the planning field in general is looking at, more the health indicators. Obviously, identifying where landlords need to step up and make more improvements. So yeah, what do you see as the future? What do you think you would love to be doing next with all of this information?
Oh my gosh, we have so many dreams. I'm sure both Victor and I could
well,
tell
we were
you a
chatting
lot.
AI, I think, before you jumped on too. We're like, what is the future of this? Yeah.
Well, we mentioned that it's just something you said about health. So I mentioned this in passing at the end of the Reclaiming Our Neighborhoods kind of project discussion, but we are working, we have an amazing staff member who's a graduate student at UWM who will be working as this capstone project on a project correlating those housing conditions with health outcome data. So we're hoping that that becomes a resource as well to understand kind of the intersection between, where you live, what your physical environment is like, and the health outcomes you experience. Because housing condition data is not very common at this scale, we feel like it's going to be a really awesome kind of unique way to look at health in our communities, and hoping that we can learn something from that and share it, share it with all of you and with the Milwaukee community in general, as well as with the Ron Coalition.
And I could chime in a little bit also. I think, when we think about, the idea of transforming our communities or, creating systems change, it all starts with like awareness, right? Like if people are not aware, are clear where they're starting from and making decisions based on evidence, then we're not going to get there, right? So I think that our role as an organization is to create that awareness, to have, I mentioned, have, better data so we can have better decisions and have better communities. I'm also in some projects that we're working on. We're working on some collective impact projects, such as the RON project. And what I would say is, in the future, I would love to see more cross sharing of data, where data is more available on where we can just hopefully have like I don't know if it's like a data hub, or where we are making decisions based on something that's available to all of us as a collective, that we're not, the idea of like holding on to some things and not being able to share it. I think it's something that's holding us back a little bit. And there's also some implications, right? Making sure the data is protected, making sure that, that all of that does, they're secured. So I think that we have some ways to go to get there, but I think partnerships and the idea of collective impact is going to get us there. And as I work with different entities, more and more entities want to go that route because they know that having that at hand will allow better decisions for the community, but also continuing to empower the community. I was just talking about this. Our current demographic, in social media for us was like 40 to like 60. We want to reach a younger generation with best data practices, right? So that we recently hosted some students, some high school students, to a workshop. They use that knowledge to implement a youth summit for their peers. So talk about data to action, right? Like they learned about it, they got some of the data, they presented it to their peers, and they did something with it. So I think a couple weeks ago somebody said like data is the future, and I said like, well, data's always been there, right? It's just how do you make it so it's accessible so that people know what to do with it, and that they're not drowning on data where you can have tons of numbers you don't know where to start from. So it's important making sure we the role that we have in this organization is making sure we are gathering the data that's going to be the best to be used by communities.
I think that is the future. I don't know if Jody has any comments to share, but I know she's brought you in to talk with her graduate planning students and some of her other students as well. I think that's important so people understand what data is available, and that's on us to share that as well as in a different professional level. So Jody, do you want to share any sort of best practices and how you're sharing the content?
All right, well, thanks, Marilyn, and thanks, Victor and Danya, for this amazing conversation and also sharing all the awesome work that you all have been doing as a team and working with different organizations and neighborhood in the city. I would say, with data there, and during our discussions in class, there's so many data, so much information out there. So creating space to foster meaningful conversations between residents, other organizations, and way that we can improve our the quality of our city, quality of our neighborhoods, and also encouraging those conversations. I think that's wonderful. So looking beyond the numbers and understanding that a lot of the time those numbers means people and putting people first. I think that's what you all been doing. So again, thank you so much for sharing all this with us today.
I want to echo that and thank you, because what's so important, at least in my almost 30 years of practice, is the numbers and statistics are vital to tell the story, because perception sometimes moves in another direction. But when you have the data to say that's accurate or not accurate, it impacts investment, land value, property values. So the data is really important. I think I'm most excited that you have the residents engaged, because ultimately we need them to take ownership, right? And then it's their neighborhood and they know that it makes a difference. So really appreciate you guys spending some time with us. I don't know if you have any closing comments, but we will be sharing the recording. Blythe will put a survey in the chat right now for those who are still on. We ask you to fill out the chat or the survey, I should say, about today's discussion, and also identify any topics that you would like us to explore for the spring. We are halfway through filling up our spring list of lectures. So Victor and Danya, thank you. If you want to have a couple comments, I see you're marketing a little bit.
Yeah, totally. So we do have an event happening October 18th. It says, the countdown is wrong because we took a screenshot. But if you go to our and here's the link, it's our data day page. Right now we have close to 300 people registered. Today registration closes. So if you look at your calendars and want to attend, it is the largest event that we've had so far that we hosted. It will be at the Italian Community Center. And something unique, we'll be sharing a lot of different best data practices, examples. We have 2 keynote speakers coming with our national keynote speakers. We really want to make sure there's a place for people to congregate and, you know, different sectors to come together and share some of the amazing things that they're doing. So that's what you will expect. It starts at 8:30 registration. It will end at 4:30, 3:30 to 4:30 is the celebration, happy hour on us. So if that's an incentive, you know, please consider attending, and please be in touch with us. You know, the previous slide was, you know, has our contact information. Please, you know, if there's a project, if there's something that you want to collaborate on, or want to learn more about some of the data that we have, or have suggestions about data that perhaps could be useful, please let us know. You know, we're always welcome, you know, those conversations, and we know that partnerships are key. As a small organization, and, you know, small but mighty organization, you know, what we do is, you know, create partnerships that are hopefully transformational to be able to provide, you know, the best services that we can for our community. So thank you for having us, and I appreciate the time.
All right, thank you to you both. Hopefully we'll see everyone on October 25th for our next Innovative Cities Lecture with Angela Brooks from APA. Have a good week.
Thank you all.